On this episode, I have a repeat guest, Dean, and he talks about what he's learned over the past year for going through and setting up the right systems for his agency and really having a substantial growth. And he also talks about what he's learned at just focusing on top line revenue. And I think you really like the episode. Dean does an amazing job. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Dean, welcome back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me again, Jason.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on again. Tell us, for the ones that haven't heard the first episode you were on, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Dean LaGrange. I run a direct-to-consumer advertising agency. It's called Grange Digital. We help 7 to 8 figure brands with Facebook and Instagram advertising. So we've been running that for about 3 years now. Seriously, I should say, 5 years figuring it out. But so far, so good, helping brands manage, produce, and scale ads.
Awesome. And so what have you been seeing when it comes to Facebook and some of the announcements? I'm just curious because, a lot of people are, going, oh, Facebook's done. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So when I look at Facebook, there's two major things. There is organic and then paid. So we usually make our revenue for our clients on the paid acquisition side, but not to then take energy away from the organic. Facebook, and along with other platforms, Instagram as well, we can always see that there's going to be a change. And we understand that they can always implement whatever rules they would like. So as a Facebook and Instagram advertising agency, we understand that that could be a thing in the future. So always adapting and always changing and going with the times where the attention's at is always what's important to me, at least. Being, like I said, we've only been 3 to 5 years in this thing. There's a lot of people that have a lot of experience. And I think once you look back from MySpace or even just now to like TikTok, where the attention's at, depending on how you use that attention during the time, I think that's the important question. So we honestly aren't too worried about changes. There's iOS 14 for Apple users for advertising. That seems like it'll be disruptive, I should say. But if you're a well-trained marketer, you should understand that you should probably have an email list. You should have other forms to get that attention. So it's just like everything else. There's always going to be one problem, and then there's always going to be excuses for how you can't overcome it. So, I mean, we've been doing fine with Facebook, all of our accounts. We averaged out like a 3.9 return for all of our clients. So there's other agencies that do amazing stuff, get 6 to 10 to 18 return, but we're having a good time being consistent, so understanding that we can be consistent for our clients, that's something that we're really focusing on. But it flustered our feathers a bit, a lot of rumors going around about how it's going to change things up. But for the majority of our clients, they're doing just fine. And also we've been able to implement more services as well. So on the revenue side, we've actually probably doubled because now we've had more opportunities where we used Facebook as kind of the foot in the door, so to say, to then make them money. And then once we gain their trust, then now we can now offer more services. So we're on to the scaling side of things now, and less the foundational side of things.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, a lot of the people just focus on one particular service, and I'm like, look, your clients have a problem and you need to have a solution, and it can be a number of different things. And also too, it should be one of your part of the solution should be strategy, not just execution.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you've learned that over the years. What's a couple things that have worked for you over the past years that, people listening are like, and sometimes it's the easiest things, but what are some things that are working for you?
Yeah, so immediately, I've gone over probably the playbook 3 times now, and I still think I've underutilized it, to be quite honest. But the one thing that I learned right off the bat is understanding what you offer and then not accepting anything less. So pre-qualifying is a huge, huge, huge determining factor. And you even mentioned it, strategy was kind of the golden ticket for us. So When we work with clients now that are prospects, we charge for our strategy right from the beginning, so they understand that we are experts in the field, and why they're talking to us it gets a lot more serious on them. So it's not a discover call is great, but if you charge, it seems like then they have a bullet point list of what they need to discover out of nowhere. So the second we started charging for strategy and our worth and understanding that, our strategy alone and them implementing it is good enough for a majority of the problems. Figuring out those problems for them is where it starts. So I think a large implementation from last year was understanding that we can charge for strategy, and then also our clients want them. So I was a little naive, and in like my first 2 years of running my agency, of course you want to do a lot of free work, so I'm not talking against free work, but we were making clients like millions of dollars. And I forgot that we were doing that for them. So once we understood that, and we understood the system that we use for that, it really started to change the wheel. So the first thing I'd say for sure is charging for strategy. And then second to that is not taking on clients that we shouldn't. That was probably the biggest downfall for us last year. We took on clients that we should not have. We built a structure to service them, but we neglected the structure on how we bring in clients and the clients that we want to hold a standard to. It's kind of like dating, to be honest. You're like, I'm going to be married to this person. And then at the end of the engagement, people wonder why then things went bad. It's like, well, you didn't treat it like dating. You don't just date a random person just because and then complain that the engagement went wrong. Nothing was thought out. So I guess understanding who the right people to service are and gain vision for that was a huge adjustment for us. But once we started saying no to others, our value started to go up, which was very, like I said, as a younger individual, I'm very impatient. So that small loss looks like a loss, but really it's an executed growth for long-term seeds to plant. So those would probably be the two things.
It is so hard, when, I can remember when I was a lot younger than I was now. Yeah, you are impatient and you feel like in order to, and you, in the beginning of the year, like we're recording this in January.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning of the year, we set out our goals. And I think a lot of times we set out the wrong goals. We just set it out for top line, gross revenue. And then we will sacrifice anything. We'll sacrifice taking on the wrong clients. We'll sacrifice our time. We'll sacrifice, everything in order to get that, versus thinking about what's the true goal. And usually I tell people now, and I need to go back into the playbook and adjust this, is like, focus on your time goal first and create rules around that. And then you'll never sacrifice that for the most part. And then really focus on, the profit. And I'm glad you're charging for strategy. That's, I don't know why we always start out giving that away for free. And, like we were talking in the pre-show, I recently got a German Shepherd puppy, and, you're always training, or she's training you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with your prospect. If you don't make them go through your process, they're going to, that's a signal to them that they can dictate what you're going to do, which will affect the results, because they're going with you for a specific reason. Like, you have a process, a proven plan, rather than just be reactive to what they have.
Yeah, and and if we were to use that dog training analogy, it's like it goes into everything with clients, from strategy from the beginning. They understand that they're paying you, they then get that engagement, then now they have an objection to overcome themselves, they complete it, and now they have a sense of accomplishment, and then your strategy that you gave them now then becomes valuable. And the other thing too that we didn't understand is, I think we were trying to do a bunch of free work to grow our brand, which is fine. But once you have such a large tunnel and you have such large tunnel vision, you think that you can continue. Well, I still do a lot of free work too. If Apple, Mercedes, or whoever they're going to get free work. It's Nike, so the big brands we're going to service and do that for, at least figure out a way how we can get our name in there. But for the majority of the park, we call it like the sandbox. We need to understand what our sandbox is. What are we playing in for the next 5 years? So sometimes we have to readjust as the years go on and understand, whoa. It's like what you said. What are we really even trying to do for our goals? And whenever we have our clients now, we kind of have to train them like a dog. So to train them on what our standards are, what are our core values, and kind of just simplify things, because there's a lot of hype trying to do free things, and there's probably underlying things why you want to do it for free. But if you look at your core values and what you stand on, the free work, so to say, is a lot easier to choose from. And then it's also a lot easier to stand and say no, when that client comes around that is giving you fuss or whatever. So it's a lot of training ourselves, not the dog, and understanding how we can then go about to make a successful future. So it's definitely fun.
Yeah. Well, everybody's always learning. The day you stop learning, you might as well just hang it up,
Yep.
because
Yep.
everything's always constant moving.
Yeah.
And whenever you say, I just wish I could go back to the way it used to be, that's meaning just go back to doing it by yourself. And
Yeah.
now you don't have a scalable business, but that's okay too, if that's something that, people actually want. But most people want to be able to, you get into business to create something amazing where you have that freedom to pick and choose and do what you love. And a lot of times you have to go through some of the hard stuff in order to scale. In the pre-show, Dean, we were talking a little bit about what you've learned this year from, really not, I'll let you probably tell a better story of it.
Yeah, so what we've learned was that, well, for one, the number one takeaway is the playbook doesn't get old. It is very tried and true to systems. So if you're understanding systems, you can go back to see and kind of document too. The great thing about the playbook is you get an understanding of where you're at and where you want to go. But also too, in the next year, you get to look back and say, what the heck was I thinking? So like with you, I got on a strategy call, I think like a year into it, and I said, look, I think I just need backup. I think I'm not doing this right, clarification. So the first round of the playbook, we made money and we were positive in revenue and we saw huge growth, which was awesome. But really it exposed the fact that we were just doing what you said in the beginning, just creating revenue, doing the things, a great service, but there was no system at all. So kind of running the course for a year and a half to understand what that system was, and then also to see the system failures and being open to the failures. So a good example of that was when we implemented systems from the playbook, I had to take a step back from not the implementer, but now the owner. So then I had to start hiring out. That caused a whole bunch of other problems that I had no clue how to handle, let alone step into the role of the owner, because there was a bunch of pre-qualified now employees or 1099 people within my agency that I needed to now invest in how to be a leader. So I'd invest a lot in leadership and how to become a better person to serve them and kind of work for them. So I'm just really just the head assistant or head problem, CPS, chief problem solver. So once I became the chief problem solver, and also too understanding that you can't be so hard on yourself, we looked at the systems. I noticed that we were making a lot of mess ups with scalability. So hiring the wrong people, getting the wrong clients, because now that we started to make better systems, we were more attractive to other businesses. And now we got a revamp. So now we're getting a bunch of work, but then we didn't understand that it's all money isn't good money. So top line revenue was awesome. But then we got to go back to the playbook and understand, okay, for example, the first half of the playbook goes over selling, creating your like establishing your company and displaying it to everyone. But there's a good chapter in there where it goes over a whole diagram chart of how you can then outline your team, how you do a workflow, how you then designate. And I completely skipped all that because we didn't need to. I was like, oh, that's great. It talks about then how to outsource, and then it has the whole flow chart. I was like, I don't need a flow chart now. 8 months later, I run back to the portal because I was like, what does this flowchart thing say about how to run a business? So I think that was the one thing, changing from being the head advertiser to the head actual business owner was probably the one major change, you know?
Yeah, it's we all want that, and a lot of people come to us and they'd be like, "What's the silver bullet?" And I'm like, "There's no silver bullet. There's only this all this silver that you put together and you morph it." And I say, and that's why I always like when I sent you the video when you first jumped in, I'm like, make sure you go through it, take your time and go through in order. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of people that they get that one thing that they want and then they stop. But that's why we give everybody access to it for a lifetime. We're like, look, we're always going to update this thing.
Hmm.
And so always go back, because a lot of times you'll get those quick wins, but then it does show you where the leaks are in the boat that you can actually go back and then really fix that foundation for the right part. So I'm glad you went back
I'm
to
glad,
it.
I'm glad I went back too, because looking back now, I don't even know how the prices change on it, but whatever the price is, to be honest, it's worth it. Because when I first grabbed it, being really transparent, I scraped everything together because I was like, I need this for my business. This is the right thing to do. And then going 2 years later, I was like, this is so overvalued. This is incredible. There's no way that you can get all this within like whatever the price was. I was like, this is insane. So just kind of taking a step back. And then you mentioned it earlier. A lot of people are probably going to get one thing to then solve their business, but it's funny because then you notice other things that you need and then you go running back to it. So that's probably the coolest part, because it got us to where we needed to be revenue wise, and then it exposed and gave answers to what we needed to do to manage and maintain that revenue. So that's kind of where we've had a lot of success, understanding, getting rid of all the clutter, and kind of just getting very direct with the skills that we're very, very talented at.
Well, I'm glad you've done it. Really, yeah, the stuff is all out there. You just need to execute and then morph it to your own. And it's always an honor to see people transform, from an owner to a CEO. Where now, because I remember going through that same time of going, I was an owner for many, many years, and it was just, if I went away, the business went away. And that's a pretty stressful situation where I felt like I had to do everything. And I talk to people all day long that are in that same boat of going, oh, I can't add more people. That means I have to do more stuff. It's because they don't have the right systems in place in order to execute, regardless if you go all check out the agency playbook or someone else's system. You all have to create the right systems, from, where's the agency going to how are we going to position, what's the right offering, how do we, increase this pipeline, right? And then after you do that, and that's where a lot of people's stuff stops, or they stop and they don't focus on like what you focused on, is like the delivery, what's the operations, what's the team structure look like. So I can take a week off. So I can take a month off if I wanted to, 6 months down the road, or whatever we want to do. So I applaud you for doing that. Um, this has been awesome, Dean. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the audience?
Yes. And last time, I think I came up with something to that would help resonate. But this time, I think it's just one thing that I'd like to point out, especially with our company core values. It's the first one: serve and clients first. No matter how successful you are, no matter how good you are at your craft, if you're not doing it to serve them, no matter what system you have, I believe it'll fail. And we find ourselves trying to have an underlying factor of why we really want success. And we simplify with cars, homes, all that other stuff. But it was like what we were talking about in the pre-show. During a pandemic, we're able to reposition ourselves and our families to be in better situations. The most stressful thing about our day is dogs barking. So there's a lot of things that we let get ahead of ourselves and we let fog ourselves. But if we're all the way from owner to implementer, if straight up, if you just aren't taking your clients first and serving them, I just purely do not believe that it will be beneficial for you in the long run. and it will come to a time now where people are going to get exposed, and those who really love are going to shine.
Yeah, it's I remember when the pandemic happened in March or April, and we were able to go out to our house in Colorado early because our kids were off and everybody's freaking out. Business was, really drying up for those first couple weeks. And I remember I was like, let's just do something totally for free. There's no offer, there's nothing. And I was like, I'm going to get on for 14 days and do a 14-day quarantine and just walk people through and answer questions. And we did that for nothing. We didn't have any call to action, whatever. And I told everybody, like, you might think there's something in the end. I'm like, no. But what I found is it helped so many people. So many people later on came back, they jumped in the playbook or they jumped in the mastermind or whatever it was. And that was never the intention.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to do that because I loved it. And then I go back to thinking when I sold the agency and I was depressed, I didn't have that significance. So
Yeah.
if you know how to do something really well and you have passion for helping out a particular audience, I don't think you cannot fail. But
Yeah.
those two things that you have to have, and there's the stressful dog bark.
Hey,
Cued on perfect, right?
hey, we're not working for anyone but our pets and kids and family. So
That's it. That's it. We were talking to the pre-show. I was like, I just got a 8-week old German puppy or German Shepherd puppy, and I was like, she's gonna start barking.
if that isn't a way to end a podcast, I don't know what is.
There you go. Well, maybe I just need to show a picture of her,
Uh-huh.
on the thumbnail. But no,
Yep.
but well, awesome, Dean. What's the website people can go and check out the agency?
Yes, sir. Our company name is Grange Digital, like the ZZ Top song. So LAGRANGE digital.com.
Awesome. Well, go check it out. And if you guys like this episode and you want to check out the agency playbook and really figure out what are the right systems, what's that foundation that you can actually follow and build upon, so then you can truly scale your agency and do what you love doing, make sure you go to jasonswank.com/playbook. And if you don't, I can't feed
The dog.
Aspen, the little puppy. So if you don't, you hate puppies and you hate
Uh,
cats and you hate kids. So make sure you go to jasonswank.com/playbook.
Love it, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, man. Take care.